Welcome back to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty Show. Back again today with Dan. How's it going?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. As we talked about last time, we're going to try and do this pretty regularly on Thursdays. We're creeping up on 500 subscribers. I've said that once we hit 500, we're going to start trying out the live shows so we can get some more, fan interaction during these streams. It'd be a pretty fun thing to do. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, so we're sitting at like 474, I think, last time I looked. So, for those of you that are joining that enjoy this content, definitely please pound the like, subscribe, everything, and we'll get these live shows going. But we're going to start this off kind of reacting to the Giants' last homestand. They took 2 of 3 from the Reds. They took 1 from LA, which, almost felt like throw a parade after they finally beat them a game. And, unfortunately, a little bit of missed opportunity. There definitely was, that first game of the series was there for the taking. They could have taken 2 of 3. And we'd have had a party on this show today. But as it stands, they're sitting at 20 and 25, which, far from ideal. But the National League is pretty terrible, and they're only a game and a half back of the 3rd wild card spot right now. So it's definitely not like the Giants are even close to being out of this. So I'm going to kick it over to Dan at least to start, and he can give me your reactions from this series and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, like you touched on, it's not panic mode yet. I mean, we've all been begging for the kids to play, man, and it's a shame that it's happening in this way with this amount of injuries, especially that we've seen during this homestand. But let the kids play. I think there's a lot of positives to take out of it, in addition to the negatives, like you said, with all the injuries that happened. A 3-3 homestand, a couple games that we easily could have and should have won. But a lot of the young guys that we've been calling for since spring, they've come up in this homestand. They're making their mark, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that along the way. So,
yeah, I completely agree. The injuries suck. Nobody wants to see them. I mean, even for a guy like Austin Slater that you and I have been begging to get off this club, we didn't want him to get off. We don't want him to go on the IL from a concussion. We want the guy gone because they DFA'd him and make him, put his house for sale. We don't want this guy around. not that we want him to get injured or anything like that. And it's a lot of guys. Soler, he's hopefully going to be back soon. There's some of the kids they pulled up, Wisely and Luciano. As much as we all want to see Luciano play, the reality is this team's not going to trot him out there because the reality is it's probably out of fear that he comes up and hits 2 home runs in a series.
Yeah.
And it's the fan outrage would be through the roof if you were to send him down right after.
Yeah.
Casey Schmidt, I think they feel more comfortable with defensively, so they're trying to see if he can kind of force the issue while Ahmed's out. And if he doesn't start hitting soon, he's probably going to go back down too. But 2 of the kids are really showing up and in a big way for everyday players. I think Matos right now is 4 for 12 since they brought him back up with.
Yeah, he's raking
5 RBIs, I think, in the series against LA. Elliot Ramos has 5 RBIs since his call up. He's produced 5 defensive runs saved in the outfield for those that like the analytics for fielding, and a couple putouts, and he's really flashed the glove.
Absolutely.
I mean, Ramos and Matos drove in 8 of the 10 runs in the series. So
yeah, I think that says everything that you need to know, and that you and I have been asking for since the spring. It's like I said, it's a shame that the 2 guys, Ramos and Matos, are up playing due to injury. But look at the result. It's they're the reason that we've been in these games. They're the reason that we won yesterday. I mean, Matos with that incredible catch in center, incredible catch, and then Ramos, like you said, driving in that RBI double yesterday. It's these are 2 guys that fans have been wanting to see, and now they're getting their opportunity, and they're running away with it.
Yeah, and what I like the most about this whole thing, and I love that Ramos is just hitting balls hard right now, because if you were to just glance at his stats, I mean his strikeout percentage right now is 36.7%.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got some swing and miss. He certainly does. I mean, he's not a perfect, player coming up just doing everything perfect, but he's showing enough, and I think he's showing enough game in and game out.
Yeah.
Both with the glove. I mean, that's something that I really like, because if
For
his
sure.
defense was below average and he's just not hitting, like they can't keep him up. Like they wouldn't be able to justify it. But the fact that he's playing, really above average defense in the corners,
Mm-hmm.
and he's hitting and producing at the plate and
Mm-hmm.
coming through in clutch 2-out situations, him and Matos, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
are coming up in 2-out situations with runners in scoring position, getting knocks, or, in Ramos's case, it was a runner on first and he put one in the gap. And, that's how these guys are going to get opportunities to fight through those struggles and fight through and adjust to how the league's pitching him. I mean, he has 1,200 at bats in AAA. At some point, he has to learn to hit major league pitching at the major league level, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And he's gonna have to learn how these guys attack him, what they're doing to try and get him out. Which, yeah, he's getting a lot of sliders away, and he spits on some of them, and he chases after some of them. But it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna take time to adjust to that. And I think the longer and more at bats he plays, like, or receives, like, he's going to start improving at all those things. Like, he's gonna
Yeah.
get so.
Yeah, I think it was also great to hear Bomel come out the other day and just say, "Hey, look, you know, Matos and Ramos, they're gonna get a shot. They're gonna get plenty of playing time. You're gonna see Matos in there in center field almost every day, and likewise with Ramos in one of the corner outfield positions." And I think that's a good thing, because what we've seen during this homestand and what a lot of fans have brought up is, you touched on it, one with the swing and miss from Ramos, and like you said, the only way he's gonna learn to adapt to major league pitching is by facing major league pitching. So as long as he's performing quality defense, like you touched on in the corner outfields, I mean, again, in the series against Cincinnati, you had one game where he started in right field, got an assist and a put out, and then due to injury, he moved over to left field and made another crazy diving catch. So it's like that versatility and defensive capability that he's bringing justifies that 30% strikeout rate through this first series, in my opinion. And he's only going to get better against major league pitching as he continues to face them. And then same goes with Matos. I mean, you had a lot of fans touching on the fact of, oh, he's not a center fielder. Oh, his initial release and to the ball, it's just not it. And I mean, I agree. I think he's more of a corner outfielder as well, but he damn sure yesterday proved, hey, I can play this position, and
Yeah.
and that's no fluke either. So I mean, hats off to both of them for stepping up to the plate, figuratively and literally.
Yeah. Can you believe there were people saying after, I think it was the first game of the series, I saw people actually saying that Matos was afraid to take on the wall.
Yeah, yeah, and I think,
I couldn't help but laugh.
yeah, and I think that was put to rest yesterday, because, oh man, what a
Yeah.
catch!
Yeah. And the other one that I've heard some people say in the past was like, oh, because I've heard the criticism on Luciano that he doesn't put his body on the line, and
Mhm.
there's a level of truth to that. Like, he's not a guy that's diving all over the place. Like, and maybe it's all the different injuries he's had, and he's
Yeah,
trying to protect himself. But like, Matos is not that guy. Like, Matos
oh,
dives even when he shouldn't dive. That dude dives at everything when
yeah,
if he
literally,
thinks he can get to it. And
he's
I've
fearless.
criticized that in the past, where I'm like, dude, you got to pick your spots. Like,
Yeah,
there were balls last season that he dove for, and guys would get extra bags, and I'm like, dude, you're like 3 feet from that ball. Like, even on your full extension, like, you weren't close. What are we
yeah,
doing?
I know what you mean. I was one of those, so I feel you.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, I get it. Like, he wants to make, it's like Webb said, he's a showman. He wants to make the big plays. He wants to make the stuff that
yeah,
people talk about. And
mhm,
but yeah, you just got to pick your spots. And yesterday, that was a hell of a spot to pick it. So
absolutely,
take him on the wall
absolutely.
there.
No, yeah, those have been two bright spots in this home series, and there's plenty more to touch
Yeah.
on. I mean, obviously, you'd want to win against LA, but I mean, we'll take 2-1 against Cincy and 1-2 against LA.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were some other stuff like Hicks. I'd been interested to see what he would look like against LA, and he grinded, got through
Yeah,
five innings in his start. Um, Webb, after that first inning, you kind of felt like there was no chance he would get through. I almost didn't feel like he'd get through five. He got through six.
yeah, he looked
He did.
great.
he did what aces do, and that's, we're going up against their best in a game that it's a must win, even if it technically isn't a must win. But they were kind of backing themselves against the wall there with all these early losses, and he was a stopper, and he got it done against arguably the best team in baseball. So that's definitely the best lineup in baseball, I would say. But yeah, he shut him down. There were some other bright spots. Some, Doval, 2 great outings against LA.
I think Doval topped out at 102.5 yesterday.
I was just gonna say that I saw that pitch. I texted my dad like immediately after, and I saw that. I was like, dude, 102 at the knees is disgusting. That is so not fair. Like, grab some pine, bro. Like, and then kudos to Shohei Ohtani, who took like 101 at the knees and like slapped it into left field. And it just, I'm like, that's an impressive piece of hitting. Like, I'm not rooting for the guy because he's on LA, obviously, but that's an impressive piece of hitting to do that. Yeah. And a few of the kids. I mean, Sean Jelly continues to look good. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in a bit. Randy Rodriguez, who I just wish they would stop putting him in with like runners all over. And I'm not saying he can't eventually be that guy, but
they just throw him to the wolves, man, every time.
Yeah, he's pitched like 2 games or 3 games now, and it's been either
pressure.
Super high pressure in like a dumping rain in Philadelphia, or it's been in Colorado, and now it's guys all over the bags. It's like, can we like soft landing this guy one time? like, hey, we just need to get 3 outs in the 6th. Like, that's it. Like, and I think he's a future closer, or at least has that stuff. I mean, the Giants do have a lot of options. Doval obviously is already here, but Reggie Crawford's on his way. He had a good outing yesterday in Sacramento.
Yeah, he did.
And now you have Rodriguez. I mean, they might have 3 guys in their pen in 2025, maybe even by the end of this season, that all have closer stuff. And I mean, that's exciting to me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's a lot of good things from this series, and most of them center around the kids to me. A lot of excitement. I mean, this was the most fun I had watching the Giants this season so far.
Agreed.
And it'll be nice when, as much as he's not been what we've hoped for so far, it'll be nice when guys like Jorge Soler is back and he can put him back in DH. And then, when Conforto comes back, if we can find a way to keep Ramos and Matos playing regularly, this could be a good lineup, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think there's a legitimate chance that if all goes well and according to at least my envision and hopefully yours, there's a good chance he could be singing an outfield consisting of Conforto, Matos, and Ramos. And I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Especially with Yaz coming in, especially if you want to throw him in right field against a righty, or if you want to have him as a 4th outfielder. I mean, that's a good solid core to have. And like you touched on, this team gets healthy. If Soler gets a swing back, there's a lot of potential in the long run of this team. But health is wealth.
Yeah, and there's still a pathway. Like, even if you kicked Yaz to the 4th outfielder, and it's kind of weird to say this after he just hit a 2-run homer yesterday, and he's played overall pretty well the last 3 weeks or so, but it's like, if you put him as a 4th outfielder, there's a very easy pathway to get him 2 starts a week. And whether it's you give one of the kids a day off, or they kick Conforto gets a day off and you move them over, whatever the case may be, there's an easy pathway to get him like 2 starts a week. He would be an easy candidate to be a late inning defensive replacement for Matos if they're leading. I mean, there's plenty of things they can do. It's lots of flexibility there. So the lineup has potential. Ramos is showing potential to be, dare I say, a middle of the order guy, possibly. It's fun to watch. I mean, we're happy to have a happier tone this week.
We mentioned that before we went live, and I'm thrilled about it.
And I think the team is the best thing, and there's still its warts, but no, I mean, I want to watch the kids play. I mean, I was telling you before, I'll tell everyone, I have my Will Clark like mid-'80s jersey on right now. Just hum baby, let the kids play. Let's enjoy this. So
Yes, sir.
But all right, so we're gonna kick it out. We actually got a bunch of people sending us questions here, and I got to pull up I have them up, but we're gonna go ahead and flip over those. I want to give credit to the people that are asking these questions though. So this one was from Parzival over on Bleacher Report. So these were coming from the Bleacher Report community. His question was, do the injuries, like obviously the Giants have had 7 guys hit the IL in the last 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever it is.
Literally.
Do the injuries buy Farhan another year? I'll let you start.
I'm torn, man. I'm torn because if it was up to me, Farhan wouldn't have had this year. He wouldn't have had last year. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And there's multiple reasons. I know I saw Tim Kawakami speaking about it earlier this morning regarding the fans, displeasure of Farhan. And it all comes down to you got to look at the bigger picture. Would injuries buy him another year? I mean, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out, considering the only major injury, quote unquote, right now is Jung Hoo Lee, who may be out a couple months, maybe out for the season. Nothing's for sure. And Patrick Bailey, concussions are no joke. He's on a 7-day IL, but I don't think you bring up Kirk Casale if there's not a potential for Bailey being out longer. So whether that turns into, just a 7-day IL stint or a Mike Matheny situation, that's to be seen. So it's like you only have 2 major injuries if you really think about it. The rest of them are less than 10 days from being completed, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So does it buy him another year? I think it's too early to tell. I think the Johnsons might cut him a little bit of slack if this plague of injuries continues throughout the season and ends up being one of those things where come October you look back and it's like, dang, we never had a chance to contend. We had X amount of guys on the IL on a consistent basis. So I mean, from a ownership and managerial perspective, if things continue in this trend, it probably does, unfortunately. But if you're asking me on a personal level, I would I told this on Bleacher Report. I said I would dump Farhan and sign the local janitor at the nearby YMCA. He can probably do a better job. But so if you're looking at it from personal, opinion, I hopefully say yes, but if you are looking at it from the Johnsons perspective, if these injuries continue, it probably does.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that watched my video yesterday, I mean, I'll give the Sparks Notes version of that. With the Johnsons' track record, Dan's probably 100% right. Like there's a case to be made that they'll just look at it and go, "Oh, it would have been fine had had everyone not gotten hurt." My issue with the whole thing is, if this was a one-off situation, sure, he would deserve some slack and some equity on that. This is the 3rd year in a row. Like, we can't just keep making the same excuse every year. It's like, and as a big 49er fan, like, it's like when Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt all the time, when the Niners had him as their starter. And it's like, we can't sit there and cry wolf about Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt every season and losing games and not being what we hope, at back then, when it's a guy with a history of this. And you look at the guys getting hurt, they have a bunch of guys with histories of injuries. I mean, Lee is obviously the exception, but Patrick Bailey, history of concussions. Jorge Soler always has had a plethora of different injuries in his career. They don't always knock him out for extended periods, but he gets dinged up a lot. Michael Conforto, he suffered 4 hamstring strains last season?
Yeah.
I mean, Austin Slater was on and off the IL all last season. Like, you have injury prone players. Like, injury prone players stay injured. Like, that's known in every sport. So I don't like making these excuses, especially for the 3rd straight season. But that said, the Johnsons may just write it off again if this happens.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, a couple of interesting tidbits. I don't think that, I've heard reports out there that this extension of his, this 3-year extension, actually has not been signed.
Yeah,
So
I don't know what's up with that.
and I don't know the level of truth to that, but that there have been reports out there that he has not actually signed that, or the Johnsons haven't signed it, or whoever hasn't signed it. So
Yeah.
there's always the potential that could, they could just change their mind and let him walk. But as my video, like as I said yesterday on that one, to me, it should be playoffs or bust. And the only pathway to me that you can avoid that is like if this season goes to crap and you commit to playing the kids and maybe you don't make it, but like you pull a Reds and like you embrace the kids and you still win 83 games and it's behind a whole bunch of youth. Or or you recognize early, like early June, we figure out, oh yeah, there's no chance, and we just, I don't want to say go full on fire sale mode, because guys like Chapman, Snell probably could be moved, but guys like Chapman would be struggle to move. Soler with their contracts, it would be a struggle to move. You could get Conforto, and if you wanted to move Wade, you could probably trade Wade and get something for him. That would require Farhan to actually sell high on a player, which that's never happened. Right. But or like my suggestion that has not been the most popular amongst certain fans, but you could look at moving a guy like Camilo Duvall. And to me, like you don't, if your team stinks and you need to move a closer, or and you have the opportunity to move a closer to get like an everyday prospect that's like a top 25 prospect, I would do that in a flash.
No,
especially a guy that's already in AAA, like a couple of the guys like Baltimore, which was my suggestion. So
yeah, I agree. I think though what it all falls down to is the reason why Farhan was hired. He was hired because fans in the league saw the Dodgers farm system, saw their development system. And so Farhan was hired in hopes of improving our farm system and drafting and bringing in some hometown stars. That hasn't happened. We're in year 6 and we're still have a average to below average farm system. And I think that's the biggest issue with Farhan. It's nothing on a personal level. I mean, obviously, I can't stand the dude's face and voice at this point, 6 years later. But just looking back at the whole thing, it's like, what has he developed? There's, we got Arias, and he's in low A right now. He's got potential. You've got Eldridge, who's got potential. But besides that, the only two prospects that he's drafted and developed that have turned into something is Patrick Bailey and Kyle Harrison. And even then, Bailey's got, this is his second concussion in the league. And apparently he's had 2 or 3 more between college and the minors. And so who knows what's going to happen with him. It just takes one more concussion to end his career potentially, if this one hasn't. And Kyle Harrison, this is technically his rookie season. There's still a lot to be proven and unknown with him. So it's like, there hasn't been that, that star factor to come out of the farm system, which he was brought on to do. And I think that's where the biggest issue of it comes down to. And that's why I said in the beginning that there's a bigger picture to it all than what we have currently on paper and on the field right now.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is like, you have to demonstrate some sort of future. Like,
exactly.
Like there has to be a clear, if you're not going to make the playoffs, like there needs to be a clear vision by the end of the season if they gave him that long. Like there would have to be a very clear vision, like hey, they rallied behind Matos and Ramos, and those two just suddenly look like studs. Like Matos looks like a legit 2-hitter behind Lee next season, and Ramos looks like he's going to hit 5 or 3 or something. You have to have something like that where you're like, we feel really good about this. Bailey's back and healthy. We feel good about him. Harrison's a stud. He's going to be like our number 2. Like there's a lot of things that would need to go right, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
For him.
Agreed.
And then on top of that, that's part of where my suggestion on like the Duvall thing would have been like, you're moving, you've improved the bullpen, hopefully with some guys like Rodriguez that we talked about. And, maybe Reggie Crawford's up by then. And you feel good about some of the young bullpen arms that you move a guy like Duvall, and you strengthen your farm system with guys that are like on the edge of coming up to the majors. I mean, Kjerstad and Mayo, the 2 guys that I was thinking about with the Orioles, who are their number 3, number 4 prospect. And for people wondering why I'm aiming there, it's because their other guys are like number 1 and number 12, and we're not going to get those guys. So like, that's the reality. those guys have had major league experience and they're in AAA right now. So like, if you get something like that, then yeah, all of a sudden your farm system goes from ranked in the low 20s, high teens. I want to say the last time I saw a ranking come out, they were like right at 20.
Yeah.
But that might shoot up to 15 or 14 or something. It's like you strengthen it, you have more of a future. But like, these are a lot of ifs and a lot of things that got to go their way. Like that's why it's a hard pathway to envision. But I think it really should be playoffs or bust for him. Who they would go with beyond that, I mean, I have no clue. I still really like Pete Patilla. I've liked the effect that he's had since he showed up. But I understand a lot of people probably are of the clean the whole damn front office out, get everyone out of here, and erase the stink. So I would understand, and I don't necessarily disagree if they were to move off of that, or go a different route. So
no, I agree.
Yeah. So we have kind of some questions that are stylistic play and how in certain players, but I'm going to jump over to this one a little bit. And this is a hard one to answer on May 16th. But should the Giants be buying or selling? And
I
can't remember who asked this one. This one came from, I think, Adam. Yeah, Adam asked this one.
Yeah. Like you said, it's tough to give one answer or another at this point in time, being May 16th, and there's still a little over 2 months until the trade deadline. But you have to look at it in this perspective. If the team, we're already a game and a half out of the wild card, like 8-9 games out of the West and into Dodgers. If this downward trend continues, I think you have no choice but to sell. And with that being said, who do you sell? I think you sell high on a player like Lamont Wade Jr. This is his arbitration year. He's still technically under contract for next season and a free agent after 25. So I think if you're going to sell, that's going to be one of the main guys to sell. And I know I just pissed off a bunch of fans because he's had a great season. He's got a 469 OPS or on base percentage, I should say. So he's had a phenomenal start to the year. But I think, if we fall out of contention so bad, or we're, 20 games out of first place in the West and we're 12, 13 out of the wild card, I think you got to, look at yourself in the mirror and say, this season's probably a wash. It's especially if the injuries continue and this downward trend either continues or gets worse. And I think at that point in time, there's no choice but to sell. However, on the flip side, let's say the team gets healthy over this next few weeks, and we go on a little hot streak, and next thing you know, oh shoot, we're only 5 games back of LA at the end of July, and we're firmly in position for a wild card position at the very least. Then by all means, buy. Who do you buy? There's 2 names that I would love to have on the offensive side. I'll let you chime in if there's any others that you would suggest. But the 2 that I would, be trying desperately hard to get, which seems like a long shot. Kyle Tucker, get a legitimate bona fide star on your team. You might have to give up, a pretty decent haul to get him, but that is a legitimate star, a legitimate threat in that lineup, which will strike fear into any team that you play, which is something this offense has been lacking since Buster Posey. So I think that would be one target that I would go at. And if you want to go after a potentially cheaper target, if New York falls out, New York Mets, if they fall out, and have a pretty downward spiral, they're probably going to sell and trade Pete Alonso, just with him being an upcoming free agent. And I think you can get him for a little bit cheaper than you'd be able to get Tucker, or a lot cheaper, I should say. I would think that'd be another guy to buy, because then you're at a point where you got a solid power threat first baseman. A lot of fans don't like him. I know a couple buddies that aren't particularly fond of him. But if you get a Pete Alonso and he doesn't cost too much to get, and you strike him in the middle of your lineup surrounded by Conforto and Soler, I think that's pretty nasty. You get probably I saw a stat, I think since he came into the league, he's had the most home runs. since he came into the league in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, he hit like 50 as a rookie or 52 or something like
Yeah.
that.
So
He
it's
just
like,
consistently bangs a ton out.
yes, I think it'd be awesome to get him. But I think you got to, it's too early to decide. But if you're looking at it from both perspectives, depending on how the next month and a half goes, those are the directions I would go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, if this team circles the toilet in early June or whatever, like I wouldn't even wait around. Like to me, like if it's like mid June and we're circling, man, just dive into the kids. Just full on embrace it. You know, I've used the term in the past, more last season, like embrace the suck. All right, just embrace it. Go to the kids. I still think you have the pitching to be competitive on a daily basis. You might lose a lot of games, but you're not going to be like losing every game 10-2 like you did to LA a couple days ago. Maybe against teams like Atlanta and Philly and LA, sure, but like you're not going to lose every game like that. You're going to have a lot of tight games still. And you know, if the season circles just go full on, just dive, I think they could be in a I think they could go into a rebuild and still turn it around fast if they do it properly. Like you don't have to go full Astros and tear it to the studs, because there is quite a bit of talent in the upper levels between AAA and the majors. Especially because they're not going to dump Webb. Like we already know that. You have Bailey, you have Harrison, you have in the staff, like you have guys like Mason Black and Carson Whisenhunt. Birdsong's probably gonna be in AAA before long. There are, whether what we think of these guys as position players and whether or not they're going to turn into really good players, you still have guys like Luciano, Schmidt, Matos, Ramos. Hell, Hunter Bishop is off to a hot start in AAA. Who knows if he can turn into a functional major leaguer? I mean, there's tons of players in the upper levels right now that may or may not be solid players. Blake Sable, maybe you put him at first base or something. You know, there's a lot of guys that up in the upper levels that if you were to be able to replenish a few more, you know, focus more on guys in AA or AAA when moving guys like Lamont Wade, and if you did the Doval route, or if you move any number of these guys, Michael Conforto, you know, there are players that there are ways that you could try and accelerate the rebuild. And especially as a team that's now pushed their payroll to 220 million or whatever it is this season, like we know they've got the money. Like if you get your team close, you can pounce in free agency or pounce on a trade or whatever. So there are reasons that like you could accelerate this. You don't have to pull an Astros and like tank for the first pick 3 straight years or anything like that. And the buying route, like, if you're firmly entrenched, if you're I don't think you're not going to get the first wild card, like Atlanta or Philadelphia, whichever of those teams doesn't win the division, they're going to be the first wild card. But, you know, there's not a reason that you couldn't potentially be like, couldn't get yourself to where you're in position where you look like a favorite for the second if you go on a hot streak. And at that point, I'd be all in on upgrading. Now, where do I upgrade? I mean, you have to look at what's available. You have to look at, you know, who, because I don't, you know, it's impossible to know exactly who's going to be available. I think there's a chance Kyle Tucker, like you said, could be available. I would make that trade. Guy has an injury history that I would like, but if Luis Robert Jr. could be had, you know, that would solve center field. That would solve, or right field when Lee's back. I mean, the guy is a phenomenal defender, and when healthy, you know, big asterisk, but he's a phenomenal player in both sides of the ball. Also would cost a pretty penny. He got like 3+ years of control. I mean, these are guys that I would want. If you don't feel good about Luciano or Schmidt, and maybe the Brewers come back to earth like everyone kind of thought they would. I mean, they're currently in first place, I'm pretty sure. So who knows? They might just run away with that division again. But, you know, if they come back to earth and look like and start falling apart or something, you know, maybe you do try and trade for Willie Adames or someone like that. But I don't think they're going to move them, especially if they're in first place. It's just hard. Like I don't know what's going to be available on these teams right now, but. And you know, if Ramos and Matos are playing great, and you know, the reality is Conforto's having a nice season to this point, like it might be hard to go grab an outfielder. So.
No, I agree. I think Luis Robert is a dream to have, like you said. Kyle Tucker would be phenomenal. But I think it's still a little too early to be thinking about trades, though. I think it all depends
Yeah.
on how the next month and a half goes down.
Yeah, they need to start collecting series wins and just start chipping away. And
It's
I
we're
don't worry about where we're in the standings. Like, I want to see the record start
yeah.
getting.
I mean, we're mid-May and we haven't won more than 2 games in a row. So you got to start, putting some wins up, getting some series wins up, and get healthy.
The Colorado Rockies have won 7 straight. We
We
can't even
win.
win 3. With their pitching staff, they've won 7 straight games.
It'll be an interesting
That
series.
marinate for everyone.
It'll be an interesting series against them coming up for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to win 2. I don't care how hot they are. Like, you're at home, their pitching stinks. Like, you better win 2 games. Otherwise, we've got problems.
It's a
Especially because, yeah. So we'll move on to the next one. One more kind of the other 2 are going to be more player dependent or specific.
Mm-hmm.
This one was from. Keep having to scroll through these to find it. Zachariah. He said, "What future star do we actually think actually has a chance to sign with us?"
Yeah, I think it's tough because the free agent class that's upcoming isn't all that great. I think you're going to have to more so get creative in the trade department than go strictly based on the free agency that's upcoming. I think the biggest name that's supposed to be on the market is Pete Alonso. So is there a chance for him? Possibly. I mean, obviously the big name out there is Juan Soto, and I don't. From what I heard on just reports today, the Yankees are trying to work to extend him this season. So that's why I didn't include him, because I think there's a high likelihood that if he's a free agent, you can throw a bag at him and hope and pray that he'll want to take it. But let's just be realistic. We can't bring in stars like that. So I'm not putting any eggs in that basket. But I think Pete Alonso is a good name that you can consider. Will he want to go from New York to California? Who knows? I think money talks. But I think also at the same time, the Giants are hoping that Eldridge will be available either next season or the season after. Yeah. Seems like he's progressing well, and I think they envision him as the future first baseman. So I don't know. It's tough, but like I said, I think it's going to be one of those things where there's not many stars that are going to be available to sign this upcoming offseason. I think it's going to be done through trades.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the real answer would be, the most likely free, star they could sign would be a guy they traded for and they get an extension. If they did manage a trade for Kyle Tucker, for instance, like I could see them getting. He's got one more year beyond this. I could see them, adding an extension on there. So it's kind of a cheap answer. I think it also depends on what our definition of a star is. Do you consider Ha-Seong Kim a star, who's a 4-WAR player, for those that like that statistic? I mean, based on that, he's kind of a star. He's not the biggest name, but I think the answer would be him, who's close with Lee and Melvin, and that I think that's a guy that would be a air quotes star that they could sign. Maybe Alonso, maybe Corbin Burns, although with their pitching, I don't think the need will be as much for a guy like Corbin Burns, but I don't see Soto happening.
No,
as much as I'd love to get the guy, I just don't.
I don't see. I think I saw a report the other day. I think Rob mentioned it where the Dodgers are actually prepared to make a run at Kim, and that would piss me off to my core if that was the case. So hopefully, they should, but I don't want to see it happen.
No, I know. I don't either. I mean, they'd be idiots not to. That is literally everything they need.
Exactly.
In shortstop defense, he's fast. He can steal you 30 plus, and he's got some pop.
That's why you got to.
They shove him in the 9 hole and live and enjoy that every day of the week. I mean, he'd be one of the better 9 hitters in the league, and a bunch of speed in front of Mookie and Shohei and Freddie, and he'd play Gold Glove shortstop or borderline Gold Glove shortstop for them.
Yeah.
So I think he's a guy that they would have a legitimate shot at. if they spend if they put out the money, just with all the things that work in their favor as far as like his closeness with Lee and Melvin, and he's already in California, so the taxes might not be as much of a deterrent as especially if they're fighting against San Diego and LA, where he's still going to have to pay the same taxes. I think that's a guy that could be attainable.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah. So next one I've got. Now this one was from pulling it back up. This was regarding Sean Jelly. It's from Andrew. I'm kind of paraphrasing because he said, Jelly's been really solid. But he asked if the Rogers brothers should be no longer used in high leverage situations. And he kind of alluded to, Eric Miller, Sean Jelly, and Ryan Walker, in front of Camilo Duvall. Get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the Rogers twins have pissed me off this year, just to be blunt. And I actually got a fun little stat. I pulled this up. I wanted to get your opinion on it. So Sean Jelly has allowed just 2 runs in his last 7 outings. So during that time, which is 9.1 innings, he has recorded 14 strikeouts, 0 walks, and a 68.2% ground ball rate. So he has been money. And if you know me, you know that I, coming into these last few weeks, had, a strong displeasure for Sean Jelly. I would have traded Jelly for a half-eaten bag of peanuts, and I'm allergic to peanuts. So I did not like the guy at all. But I will give credit where it's due. And in the last, like I said, 9.1 innings, he got 14 strikeouts, no walks, and a 68.2 ground ball rate, which is ideal what the pitching staff, feeds off of and thrives off of. You got Webb and Hicks, or 2 of the, the best high ball or ground ball percentage pitchers in the league. So I give credit to Jelly. If it's sustainable, I think you can definitely use him as, a high leverage, high pressure situation, and drop down one of the twins down into, a middle relief role. And like you also touched on, Eric Miller and Randy Rodriguez, the potential that some of these guys are showing. I think it's time, as the season progresses, and if the Twins keep degressing, to start giving some of these guys an opportunity, especially the ones that deserve it, like Jelly does right now.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple little wrinkles that get thrown in this. You need at least one left-hander that you can put in high leverage situations.
Yep.
Miller's been a little spotty with his command, and I think eventually he takes over that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure he's ready to today. He's had some moments, obviously he bounced back. Like he gives up the home run to Kike the other day, but then he turns around and makes like Mookie and Shohei look terrible. So It's like he is a little inconsistent. I should say more than a little inconsistent. He's pretty inconsistent. Yeah. So you need at least one lefty, and that's kind of where we're stuck with Taylor, even though he's the one having, of the 2 twins, he's been way worse, I feel, just from my eyes. And even the numbers, I just double checked. Taylor's got a 4.11 ERA. Tyler's at 2.75. Where Tyler gets frustrating to me is, and a lot of times it'll feel like bad luck, but like sometimes yesterday he comes in and he gives up a 14 hopper through the hole, and then he gives up a wounded duck into right center, and next thing you know, like 2 hitters have come up, neither has hit the ball hard, and now there's runners on first and third. Like it's just, but it happens to him all the time, and consistent. And it's just, he gets a lot of soft contact. So I think he has a place. The hardest thing for Tyler Rogers is he would have been perfect. Like Bruce Bochy would have loved him before the 3-hitter rule.
For sure.
They would have loved Tyler Rogers because he could go up there and make a righty look stupid. It'd be like a right-handed Javi Lopez, where you could go up there, make a guy look dumb, and then you just to the next guy. Yeah. And he would be used like that all the time. But
for sure.
Yeah, I do think there are guys that I would rather see in high leverage situations. Sean Jelly is making a push for sure.
Mhm.
Even as I also was a guy that was on the just DFA of this guy. He wasn't providing any value. And really, I mean, before this season, for anybody that's wondering, go take a look at Sean Jelly's statistics in both the minors and the major leagues to this
Not
point.
good. Not good.
Oh, they're atrocious at every
Yeah.
level. Like it's
Yeah.
it's
Not
bad.
good.
This guy gets hammered at every level, and he figured something out. And is it sustainable? I don't know, but if he earns it, I'm all for basing stuff off merit. So if he
Yeah.
earns it, yeah, let him have those. Ryan Walker has earned high leverage situations. Now he's also a guy that can get a little scatter shot with his command, and it kind of worries you. The guy I think that could pitch his way into one of those, similar to the way Doval did back in 2021, is Randy Rodriguez. If
Yeah.
his command stays up, um, yeah, it's just hard. I mean, the bullpen, you really kind of have to ride the hot hands at times, and Taylor Rogers definitely does not have the hot hand right now.
No.
Maybe he needs to throw his glove away again.
Yeah, that was iconic. I was gonna say, I don't know if you saw Ryan Walker had some back tightness yesterday. I don't know if you saw that. That's
I
why
had not seen that yet.
that's why he was unavailable yesterday. So hopefully it's just a day by day thing. But like you mentioned, he's been great so far.
Yeah,
So I would hate to have him fall ill to that injury bug.
yeah. And he had to cut his teeth all season last year before
Yeah,
they started letting him do it this year.
for
And
sure.
now, granted, the Roger twins were both way better last season, and you weren't supplanting those guys the way they had
Mhm.
pitched for most of the year, at least. So, but this season, I mean, there's a lot of struggles back there, and
Yeah,
if Sean Jelly keeps it up and continues to look like a right-handed Randy Johnson, then sure, go ahead and
by all means.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all for him getting the seventh,
Yeah.
or whatever, like he did like he did yesterday against LA. So that's a good question. Now we got one more question here because I do have to get this wrapped up in a decent
Mhm.
time today. But the last question I have, and this was from Rob, and I kind of turned it into a question because he just asked us to talk about it. Was what do you make of the team's lack of steals and base running mistakes? Because the Giants, for like the fifth time, are in the bottom five of the league since Farhan's been here, and they were last season. I think they're 29th ahead of the Rockies right now,
Yeah.
and they just overall aside from not successfully stealing them, there's just a lack of aggression as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple things I got to touch on with this. It's one of them being you and I discussed it briefly and how the league average for stolen bases was like 75 to 78%, and the Giants are right around 53%. So they're 12, 15% lower than the league average on stolen bases, which is just absurd. So I don't know if it's a one-off thing, if it's just a fluke, or this is who the team is. But it ties back into something that you and I touched on last week, where we were talking about Farhan's commitment to damage control in his interviews, and it gets to a point where you just need to tell the guy to stop talking, because one quote that fans keep bringing up is when he said we want to get younger and more athletic, and stolen bases and base running, it all comes down to athleticism and younger. So it's like I'm beating a dead horse. And I don't want to consistently have to bring up this guy, but it's like you can't commit to saying you're going to get younger and more athletic and then roll out. You got Wilmer Flores, who's got knees worse than my 80-year-old grandfather, and you've got you know Tyler Fitzgerald getting on base in the ninth inning. Oh, he got picked off. Or you got Austin Slater finally doing something, getting on second base. Oh, he got picked off. So it's like it's hard to tell if it's a lack of discipline between the coaching staff and the players in general, or if it's a lack of age and athleticism with the roster entirely. I don't think a 53% stolen base percentage is sustainable. And I think the only way you can go is up. But I think the fact that you're implementing a lot more youth, Matos and Ramos are capable of getting their fair share of steals. Fitzgerald can, Wisely can. You got guys that can steal bags. I think it's just it's going to get to a point where, as they're being forced to play more, that you're going to be forced to be a little bit more aggressive on the base path, and you'll see a lot more steals. So, like I said, I think it ties into a lot of those factors as to why we haven't seen it thus far, but I don't think that it's going to be like this for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I do think at some point they're going to run more.
Yeah.
We saw it at one point early in the year when they were really in a funk offensively, and you saw Bob Melvin, like they ran like 12 times in 4 games or something. It was crazy. They took off a bunch, and that's been kind of the majority of their steals on the season were in like a short period of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like you said though, like you can't just run for the sake of running and continue to run into outs. Like we're not getting enough hits and base runners to afford to just run into outs all day long. So like I get that side of it. But like you said, like part of it is just getting more athletic. I mean, you look at what the River Cats have done in sack, and yes, I get it. It's not major league catchers. It's not major league pitchers holding them. It's not, you're doing it in AAA, but they were like second in the PCL at least about a week ago. They were second in the PCL in stolen bases. They don't have anybody on that team that has like 8 or 9 stolen bases. It was just a team-wide effort where a lot of guys have 3 or 4 and up and down the lineup, So yeah, I mean, if you're playing a guy like, and I know we make jokes about Greenlight Blake Sable, but even guys like Sable can go out and fetch you 5 to 10 if he was playing regularly. Casey Schmidt could fetch you 5 to 10. Matos, I think, could get you 10 to 15. Ramos isn't the stolen base threat everyone thought he would be, but he's still like 74th percentile on sprint speed, and he has a decent first step. I could see him getting you about 10. And Tyro, I mean, it's inexplicable to me that Tyro has 0 stolen bases, and it's mid-May. And I get you got to get on base to get them, and he's not exactly an on-base machine this season, but he has 0. He had 20 plus the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So he needs to figure something out. I mean, there's no reason this team couldn't steal 80 to 90 bags in the current rules. But you also like we were just saying, you can't just run into outs because you're stealing bags at like an absurdly low rate.
Yeah.
So if that number was like 70% and the league average is 78 or even like 68, 60, like up in the high 60s, I'd be like, yeah, it might be worth taking the chance. Especially when the offense is scuffling. It's a double-edged sword though. Like the offense is scuffling, you don't want to give runners away, but at some point you got to do something. And there's been a lot of opportunities that I felt were prime base stealing opportunities, and they just refused to run. Tyro's on first with 2 outs. Take off, man. And Lamont Wade Jr.'s up. You have Tyro on first with Lamont Wade up, for instance. I'm going to use this as a perfect example here. 9 out of 10 times Tyro should be running.
100%.
Because even if you get thrown out, that means you're leading off the next inning with Lamont Wade Jr. and his 470 OPS.
Exactly.
Or on base percentage, I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, go for it, man. And he's just not this season. And, Fitzgerald, I'm assuming, would have ran the other day when he got picked off, but, probably, but he never got the chance because he got picked off on we're going to just call it on a fringe balk move. For sure. Rewatching that, it was very questionable to say the least, but 100%. It's still a situation that you can't get picked off. But that's just kind of my thoughts on that. It's frustrating. It feels like the Giants are still playing in a wrong decade right now, and they haven't rejoined everybody in the 2024, and it's in a game that it's never been easier to steal bags. So I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I think they need to upgrade their Microsoft Excel and the computer to the stolen base edition. Then we'll see it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but maybe Farhan's stolen Windows 10. I don't know. I don't know. The way the team plays, they're more like Windows 98. But it's just
they're still they're running on dial-up right now.
Yeah. That's why. That's why Fitzgerald was so slow to get back to the bag. He was or when Slater got picked off second. It's
Yeah.
because it was playing the sound from the dial up in his head as the guy was turning around. Oh man. But on that note, I think that's all we've got for today.
That's a good way to end it.
Yeah, that's a good way to end the show. So for those of you that stuck around, hopefully you enjoyed that. Like I said, we're really looking forward to doing the live shows with everyone. We'll do that at 500. So if you're not subscribed, please do. I appreciate the support from everyone. Drop the comments in the section. We definitely. I know I read and reply to most comments in there as I have time. So I don't know if Dan's ever. I think I see you in there occasionally, but yeah, feel free to pop in there.
I like and react to my compliments, so keep those up, guys.
Yeah. And tell me if you guys have any other topics you want us to cover here soon or in the future. We'll be doing these every Thursday. We could, if there's something that maybe we both want to talk about sooner than Thursday, we can always see if we can work something out to do something a different day. But I mean, that's all I got. You got anything else you want to say?
No, we're good, man. I touched up on everything that I had for today. So thanks for having me on as always. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, man. Anytime. And, we're going to have more people. I know we've had a few people that have reached out asking to join too. So we may have a few of these where we get 3 or 4 of us in here and just have a party.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun.
So, all right, everyone. Well, we'll catch you next time. That's all I got. Go Giants.